Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of HBO's Mare of Easttown. We're talking episode 5, which was titled Illusions. Now, there might have been one or two different illusions we got in this episode, but what a fantastic episode of Mare of Easttown. We get more character development. We get more skeletons in the closet. There's a couple affairs going on in town. Oh, yeah, we have the kiss of death from Colin, which we'll talk about the ending. Jess, Dylan, Deacon Mark, Betty's death. There's so much to go over in this episode, and I'm so excited to be here. But before we dive into the spoiler review, make sure you all are following me on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. Look, it would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And I say it every single week, but I really mean it. I am continuously impressed by the engagement you all have with these videos, especially in the comment section. It is the best. Reading your pros, your cons, your thoughts, your theories, the conversations you all have amongst yourselves is so great. I do these every single week because, number one, I love the show, but more importantly, I love interacting with you all. So as I say every week, let's continue the conversation in the comments. Make sure to let me know your pros, your cons, of course, your thoughts on Jess and Dylan and the picture she may have taken. Deacon Mark, Father Dan, all the stuff that we get within that scene. Of course, we're going to talk about the affairs for John and Helen. We've got to talk about illusions. Is that the actual kidnapper? Is there other people attached to what he was doing, Mr. Potts, as well as the demise of Colin and that kiss of death? And we got to talk about another potential illusion with the death of Betty. So much to talk about, but I want to know what you all thought of the episode in the comments below. So a couple things I want to address up top. I may or may not be doing something a little bit fun, something different for next week's review, episode 6. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, but keep an eye on my community tab. I always like to keep you guys up to date in regards to what's coming to the channel. So I may have an announcement later in the week for a very special, fun type of breakdown for episode 6. So keep an eye out for that. But definitely mark your calendars for episode 7, the series finale of Mare of Easttown, which is May 7th, or May 30th, I'm sorry. But at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. I've done this quite a few times on the channel before for series finales. We did it for WandaVision recently, Defending Jacob last year, The Outsider, Lovecraft Country, The Third Day, quite a other shows that I watch that I've done watch-alongs for. And we will be doing a watch-along for the finale of Mare of Easttown. Again, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, May 30th. And if you all aren't too familiar with what a watch-along is, I've done quite a few on the channel, so check out my playlist dedicated to watch-alongs I've done on this channel. But it's essentially, I'll press play on my end, you'll press play on your end, and we'll watch the episode together as a community. We'll pre-game for 30 minutes, kind of talk about, just where we're at with the show, and then once the show starts, we'll just kind of have some light commentary, and then once the episode ends for 30 minutes, 40 minutes to an hour, however long you guys want to talk, we'll break down the episode together. So May 30th, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, live watch along here on this channel for Mare of Easttown series finale. So there's that to keep in mind. And then in the last week or so, we've had quite a few reviews on the channel, and I had such a great time breaking down these movies and shows. So for my movie fans out there, if you haven't already, check out my reviews for Profile, Oxygen, Spiral from the Book of Saw, Those Who Wish Me Dead, The Woman in the Window. And then for my TV fans, check out my Netflix reviews for Love, Death, and Robots Volume 2. And then one of my favorite show of 2021 thus far, and that is Barry Jenkins on Amazon Prime, The Underground Railroad. So check out those reviews, like, share, comment. Hope you all enjoy them, but I thank you all for the support on those reviews. But we got a review to talk about today, and that is episode 5 of Mare of Easttown, titled Illusions. Now, first and foremost, like I mentioned up top, this is my favorite episode of this show. Each episode gets better than the last, and that's just a true testament to this great writing and the great acting and the storytelling. But this, to me, was a perfect example of why I love this show. This episode have character development. We learn more of the characters' backstories. We learn their past histories, like Helen, obviously the affairs that John has. We close the door potentially on the kidnapping situation, but I think there's more to Mr. Potts and maybe who he was connected to. We see the death of Colin, which was just heartbreaking, the kiss of death, which we'll talk about that scene. We even learn more about Billy and Erin staying with Billy for 3 months at a particular point when she lost her mom. We learn about Mare's depression, her father's depression, him taking his own life. I mean, literally, there was just so many like mic drop moments after mic drop moments. I love this episode. I thought it was fantastic, and we have quite a few things to go over in this review. But go ahead, like I said, in the comments now, go ahead and let me know your thoughts on this episode. So let's kick things off in this breakdown, starting off with the Title of the episode, Illusions. Now, we all know illusions are misleading images. We know that they can be deceiving, again, misleading. Hallucinations sometimes are, defines illusions, and I think we get quite a few illusions in this episode, and we'll talk about my thoughts on the title in the breakdown. But very interesting title, no less, because I think there are quite a few illusions that we might have seen in this episode. Starting off with the opening scene, we have a car accident, right? And we see that this car accident has caused a power outage in the town. We kind of cut between everyone in town, from Mare, gathering lights with Helen, the turtles pooping and escaped and running around the house. We have Frank coming over with candles. But then we transition to Lori and John's house, and we see a very interesting scene. We see John talking to his son, Ryan, regarding this comment that he says to him that this is our secret, right? Only us. And we see Lori just looking out of the crack of the door, and I'm just like, Lori, you need to bust in there, like, what's going on? What's this secret that you all have? Now, we all know what we later find out in the episode. She knows about the secret, but I think John might have a couple other secrets up his sleeve that we'll talk about in this review. But back to that car accident. Maybe an illusion that we'll talk about in a little bit. But we see the rookie cop that we've first introduced to in episode 1. He finds the ID, and that person that got into a car accident is no other than the nosy neighbor, Betty. It appears that she has had a heart attack, which is the word around town so far. Again, illusions potentially, but is it an accident, guys? Was Betty, did she see something that she wasn't supposed to see? Was there someone else in the car with her potentially? Did she run into that weirdo kid, or was it just a coincidence? Or was it an illusion and makes us misleading to think that it was just a heart attack? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but I don't think it was a car accident that caused, or I should say a heart attack that caused this car accident. But we'll talk about it a little bit later. But we move on to Siobhan talking to Frank, and it's in this scene that, Frank is asked by Siobhan how things going with Faye. He says, it's not that great, I'll be honest with you, Siobhan, but, I've been through worse, right? He's lost his son. He's had a divorce. He doesn't, live with his daughter full time. So he's seen, worse days, but it's something that he asks her in this scene that I think speaks to something that Mare talks to her therapist about regarding how are you doing, Siobhan? We when you and your mom, when Kevin was around, we prioritized him. We really followed his, everyday motions and kept up with him, but we really didn't check on you. How are you doing? She says she's doing fine, and he vows to be there a little bit more and asks how she's doing a little bit more. But I think it speaks a lot to how are you doing, Siobhan? And we'll get to Siobhan a little bit later, but I think it speaks to, again, this family history of depression, and maybe something we can look to see in her character in future episodes. But as they're kind of discussing this, we see that Mare has made her way into Siobhan's room, and Mare comes across the project that Siobhan's working on regarding her brother. She sees a clip played with a young Kevin on her birthday, which again speaks to who was on the beach with him the last day, but also just speaks to Mare tapping into this trauma. We'll talk about it at the end of this review here, but when she sees Colin dies, what is the first thing she thinks of? She thinks of that scene. She thinks of how she lost her son, and it speaks to, again, what really happened to Kevin. I know some people mentioned it in the review last week in the comments. Was it a suicide, or was there something a little bit more foul play involved in his death? So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but very important scene. We transition to Mare in her therapy session, and it's in this scene here that she kind of gives us a pretty big reveals here. Number one, she mentions that the disorder mood, disorder that her son went through happened pretty early on. It definitely reminded me, for my Apple TV Plus fans out there, defending Jacob, right? Because the question gets brought up, can things be passed down and inherently passed down from one generation to the next? And she says that because this is a big moment. Not only do we know that Kevin took his own life, obviously we don't know the circumstances of how he did that, overdose, shot himself, we don't know quite yet, but we get in the scene that her father suffered from depression, which led him to him taking his own life. He shot himself, which is a big reveal, because now it's like, okay, how did Kevin take his life? What are the circumstances into, again, she said that he suffered from depression, but did he have, and this is, I'm jumping ahead here, but did he have secret affairs of his own? We know Helen had her own affairs, but there are more skeletons in his closet, potentially with Mare's dad. But it's in this scene again that she fears that, again, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, she fears that Drew might suffer from depression, might suffer from the disorders that Kevin did. So it's really important to her that she can maybe try to catch these things early, maybe get a little bit more education on this, because we kind of know when she mentioned that it seemed that Frank was really the one that kind of took care of the medical stuff going on with Kevin. Now, it wasn't that she ignored her son. It seems like he had a little bit more responsibility. So I think she's now taking more responsibility and trying to do as much as she can if it is passed on from one generation to the next, which speaks to Siobhan. Is there something, depression, mental things going on with Siobhan that she's able to suppress? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. But pretty big moment that we learned that her dad took his own life. So we cut to Mare's house, and at this point, obviously, electricity is back on, the power is back on in town, but we see a gathering of Helen, Lori, John. We see Ryan playing with Drew, and Billy's over there, and we'll talk about Billy here in a second. But we see in the scene that Helen reveals that right now the word around town is that Betty had a heart attack. Now, again, I said it up top, this episode's called Illusions, and we know illusions can be misleading. I don't think Betty just died of natural causes or heart attack. Now, to be fair, Betty seemed to be the nosy neighbor. She was concerned about her neighbor being a weirdo and spying in on her. She was concerned about her husband not having the camera on. Also, we learn about her husband and his affairs. Does she know about the affair? So she had a lot on her plate, right? But I don't think it's going to be that simple. Again, I think they're misleading us. I think there is something a little bit more to how she ended up dying and crashing into that pole. I could be wrong, but let me know your thoughts on that. But we cut back to Anne. She's over at the house and complimenting Siobhan on her project, and she mentions that she knows someone at Berkeley, and we see Siobhan still kind of, doesn't want to go away from the home. She doesn't want to move away from her mom and her dad and her nephew. She likes her situation, but I think we might see her by the end of the season probably branch off and go off to college, but something to keep an eye out for. But nonetheless, this is the big moment here. We hear the news that Lori and John have recently visited Kenny at prison, and Kenny comes up with the idea and offers or asks if they would like to adopt DJ. Now, they're thinking about it, but Mare's like, whoa, adopting DJ? I don't know about that, guys. But she does ask them, speaking of Kenny, what do you guys think about Kenny? Did he ever hit Erin? And we see John defending Kenny and saying, no, he wouldn't. I don't think so. And, John's like, she was a tough cookie. We learn about it in this scene. I don't know if this has ever been brought to our attention, but we learned that Erin's mom passed away due to cancer. Again, they might have mentioned that, but I don't recall them mentioning that ever in the show so far. But it's in this moment, and we see Lori saying that, yeah, we've always, or say John say, yeah, we've always kind of been there for Erin. And then Lori's like, yeah, isn't that right, Billy? When Erin stayed at your house that time, a couple years ago after her mom passed. And I don't know if you all noticed, but notice body language. Billy's body language in this scene. He's like completely caught off guard. He's like, that was nothing. That just happened. She was over there for a couple weeks. Not no big deal. A couple weeks, Lori says. He's like, she's over there for a couple months. I think she said 3 months to be exact. And we see Mare being a detective. He's like, oh, Billy, tell me a little bit about that. How long she was over there? Why was she over there? Being the good detective that she is. But again, it's in this moment that not only did John allude to kind of being there for Erin, which might speak to baby daddy, knowing some more information. He has his own secrets, right? But I think it is important. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, Billy being the father of Erin's son, DJ, especially if he stayed over her house for 3 months. We got to talk about that necklace still that was dated, 5/29/17. Did he gift that to her? But again, it was all in the body language of Billy in this scene, and especially when it comes to him just mysteriously having plans and just dodging out of there. And you guys saw Mare. She's like, Billy just I might have to talk to him about that. But the big thing that she does in this scene is she, detective mode, she looks at that beer that he drunk. I don't know, guys. DNA, check it right there. I mean, it might not be protocol or, morally speaking, the good thing to do to take someone's DNA without their consent. But we know Mare doesn't play by the rules, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll see if Billy has some secrets in his background and some skeletons in his closet. But let me know your thoughts on that. But cut to an interesting moment here. The best young couple of the show, right? We get Dylan and Brienne. We haven't seen her in quite a few weeks, but she's discussing, everything that's going on with DJ, and the parents want to keep this DJ. Things are a little bit weird. That it is weird that this kid is over my house and I'm not the kid's father, and these are not his grandparents. So, but Dylan, I cut him a little slack last week, right? I felt bad for him. We thought that he was going to do something to DJ in the bed, but he was holding his son. So I'm like, okay, Dylan's not completely out of the hair out of my radar for being a douchebag, but boy, did he douche it up in this episode, right? We see him talking to Brienne, and Brienne mentions that her futures might not be as bright as she wanted it to be. She's not going to college with all this stuff going on with her case, but it's in this scene that Brienne mentions, hey, Dylan, the day or the morning that Erin died, you weren't in my room. And I checked outside, I checked in the hen, I checked on all the places, and you weren't there. Where were you the morning of Erin's death? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. You know, matter of fact, get the hell out of here. Dylan, listen, I got my eye on you now. We like I said last few weeks, we've kind of kept him off our radar. He's the shot in the back. He's not the kid's dad. We kind of feel a little sympathy for him, but no, that's no longer the case now because he's completely on my radar. We'll get to a little bit later. I don't know. Again, illusions, misleading. I don't think he's the killer, but that Dylan, Jess, and that random kid that we saw in episode 1, there's something going on there. There's something involved in Erin's death, and we'll get to those theories by the end of this review. But he's now uno numero on my list as far as suspects go. But cut to Kate caring for Missy. We cut back to them in the tavern. You know, we see Katie confirms that she has been there the entire time, the whole entire year. And there was another girl by the name of Hillary that was there that cared for her when she was going through her withdrawals, because we see at this point Missy's going through the same withdrawals without having her drugs with her. We learned that Hillary was pregnant by this guy and she suddenly was gone. Now, I don't know if suddenly gone means AKA he killed her, buried her, got rid of the body. I would imagine that's the case, because why wouldn't Hillary come back up? Why wouldn't her discovery come up? So I'm pretty sure that he's killed that young girl, which means that he's capable of killing, which we know that he is in this episode. Is it capable of killing Erin if a transaction gone bad? That was my theory last week, that, you know, she met him at the park and something went wrong. We'll get to that when we get there. But our kidnapper, who we don't know at that point in the episode, has these poker nights, which makes me think who else comes to poker nights? I don't know, John, Billy, other characters in this community that may or may not know about this circuit of prostitutes who are, get addicted to drugs. And we'll get to John a little bit later, but I wonder if John's been over to that tavern a couple times. But nonetheless, we see that he comes down, and this throws away all the theories that we've had in some of the comments. It's not Richard. We obviously know that, but in this scene we didn't know that, right? But it's not Richard. It's not Colin. We see that his build, he's a big frame, he's a big dude, and we get his reveal, Mr. Potts, a little bit later. But we, at that point, I'm like, okay, it's not Colin, it's not Richard, so let's get to the point of who this character is, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But we see Mare meeting with her friend, Tam, who, I guess, character profile here. She's an old friend of Mare. She probably did some stuff for her back in the day regarding her line of work. She's a grandmother, and she's a professional ball tickler. I guess that's a nice little profile description there. But nonetheless, we get to the moment here in regards to Tam. Have you seen Erin? Have you seen Katie? Have you come across Missy? Which she does say that, yes, she's seen Missy before on a particular part of town, and she sees, in which I think this is, again, illusions, misleading. She notices that drawing that Mare had from episode 1, and I think that's something to speak to still. We talked about it in that episode. I think that's foreshadowing of missing the details. I think that kid that Betty talked about, that Mare deleted that footage, which I thought was a huge mistake. I still think that that's something to look forward to in the weeks ahead regarding the death of Erin. Keep a note on that, but I had it in my notes there in regards to that drawing that I had, that I think that that's something to look forward to in the weeks ahead. But, she kind of talks to Tam and say, hey, just come back to me if you have any information, which Tam does come through in the clutch, which we'll talk about later. But cut to Lori and John and their daughter, getting picked on at school, which was just horrible to see. Kids are so terrible when they pick fun of kids. But we see Ryan steps up, and he steps up in a major way, and some anger came out with Ryan, right? Because he's holding on this burden of his dad's secret, but he's also protecting his sister. He cracks that kid's head. I mean, boom, boom. By the way, I don't condone violence, but that kid totally deserved it. I'll just say that. But cut to Lori coming to pick him up. They have a conversation in the car, and she said, is he doing it again? So I'm like, okay, so this is something that happens quite a few times in the past. And we see at this point, Ryan's upset. He's crying. He goes out of the car. Lori catches up to him, and she asks him the same question. Is he up to his old habits? Is he doing it again? And she says to him, was it the same woman from before? Ryan looks up, and he's crying. And he doesn't say yes, but he shakes his head. So is it the same woman from before? Now, again, going back to what I alluded to a couple minutes ago, is there a connection between Mr. Potts, Friday Night Poker, having this type of ring circus of kidnapping women and men in town, taking advantage of these women in the basements, getting pregnant by Mr. Potts, having his own little prostitution ring or whatever the case may be, Could John have a relationship with Missy? Could he have a relationship with, other previous women, have affairs with Hillary, had affairs with Katie potentially? Only time will tell. But again, if it's not any of those women, who is this mysterious woman? Who is it? I'm just kind of thinking of women in the show. Is it Faye? Maybe, is she seeing, is John and Faye having an affair? I don't think it's Mare. I'm just trying to think of all the women in the show, but I mean, it could be Faye that he's having an affair with, or it could just be one of these, again, one of the women in the basement. Could have been potentially Missy, but let me know your thoughts on who this mystery woman could be, and if it has any connections to Mr. Potts. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. We cut to Betty's gathering, and this was I literally laughed so much in this scene, guys. We see Helen ask Mare about, she spoke to Frank because it appears that Faye, who I just mentioned, might have had her own affair. Faye doesn't seem to be wanting to go along with the wedding. She didn't go up to her practice recital, whatever the case may be, but we see Mr. Carroll gives a speech. He has to get something off his chest because he just lost his wife. He's been holding this secret. So I guess this talks to my earlier, did she know about his affairs? I just answered my own question. She didn't know, or maybe she didn't. She just kept it to a secret herself. But he says that he has a guilt on his chest, and he reveals to everyone at his wife's gathering that he's had an affair with Helen. And Mare's reaction, that's when I just bust out laughing. When she coughed up her, I was laughing so hard. They cut to the scene when they're in the car, and she's like, yeah, we had an affair maybe once, maybe twice, I don't know, maybe 3 times. It wasn't nothing big. It was just so funny. And I thought that, and again, this speaks to why this is my favorite episode. The show manages to throw in so many different genres of suspense and thrilling aspects, mystery, but then comedy, situational comedy, realistic comedy. I thought that was one of the most perfect moments of dropping in a funny comedic moment to kind of lighten the mood, because we're coming off all this stuff and kidnapped prostitutes and all the stuff that we're learning so far. So I thought it was perfectly placed, because the rest of the episode gets extremely dark. So we cut to the moment that hashtag Team Colin, hashtag Team Richard that I mentioned last week, and it is Colin who Mare decides to go on a date with, but it's for certain reasons. She has her own motives of why she picked Colin that we'll talk about, but it's a little bit of business and it's a little bit of pleasure. I think it's more business than pleasure as they're going on their date, and we see her just immediately asking, what information did you find about the guys on Erin's profile? None of them checked out. They all have alibis. What'd you find out about the bullet? The bullet report's coming in pretty soon, but Mare, can we have a date? Can we just kind of leave the case as it be? I mean, you're not even involved in the case anymore. Can we just have a good night? Mare's like, okay, yeah, we'll have a date, but we'll get to Mare getting back to those questions. But we cut to Helen has invited Carrie over, and it's at this point that she wants Carrie to learn the routine of Drew, because she believes that Helen believes that Carrie will get full custody. And I think after this episode, she definitely will be getting full custody, because I think Colin's mom is going to have some things to say about Mare and revolving around her bringing her son into this. So back to a somewhat awkward date. We see Colin, trying to make some little small talk, and then Mare just goes right back to it. She's like, let's go back to the case, this, that, and the other. I went to go, and Colin reveals that Mare actually went to visit Deacon Mark's past church, which brings to, the question I asked last week, why is it that Mare's withholding information from Colin, which Colin asks her that same question. He's giving her all information, but he's not doing the same. And then he mentions to her that, it's funny, Mare, my mom actually asked me, why am I going on this date with you? Because maybe you're just trying to get close to me to get information, which sets Mare off, and she just leaves the date, unfortunately. But, his mom isn't lying, because that seems to be the case. But cut to Lori crying and John promising to fix things with his son and with his family, as we see that he's gonna be, staying at someone's house, maybe going to, Kenny's house or whatever the case may be. I guess it is something to wonder, where is he going? Is he going to a hotel, or is he going to that woman's house? I guess we'll see in the coming week. Rocky waters going on in their house. Cut to a quick sequence here of flashbacks and present day events. We see Mare is, kissing Drew goodnight. We see the flashback of her when Kevin was yelling at her. We see Mare at therapy. We get footage of Kevin on his birthday. So we're just seeing, again, the mindset. This show does such a great job just letting us know that Mare has so much to deal with. Not only does she have her day-to-day life, the custody of her grandson, still dealing with the grief of her son taking his life, recently divorced, and then she's a cop. There's missing girls in town. There's a girl that just lost her life. There's so much going on in her place. So I love that the show continuously reminds us that Mare has so much to shoulder on her shoulders and the burden she has. But we see Jess get into the car And I said it last week, she is hiding so much. We see Jess get into the car with Dylan and the kid that we met in episode 1. I don't know if the kid has a name yet. And he might not be important. He might be someone that we should keep an eye out for. But nonetheless, we see that Dylan asks her, how did things go with Mare? And Jess says, yeah, I just, illusions. I misled her and told her where the journal is. But they go to the house to get the journal inevitably. But it's important to speak to, again, the trusting of Jess. Was she a real friend to Erin? What secrets does she keep from Erin? Is she a true friend? I don't know. It's a lot to kind of take in with this information in regards to that. It seems like Jess and Dylan and this kid had something to do with Erin. There's something that they're keeping a secret. I don't know if it's to the extent of death, if they're all keeping this death secret. I know what you did last summer, Oath, where they don't want to tell the people how she died, or there's something even more going on there. They might know the true identity or who the father is. Hell, it might, I'm just throwing out random thoughts now, but it may be Dylan's dad. He's protecting his dad because I don't know. I'm obviously theorizing at this point, but again, it just speaks to these lies that these people in town have been keeping from one another. But nonetheless, cut to them going to Erin's room. They get the journals. We see the douchebag that Dylan is. He sees the envelope. The money for what he thought was his son at the point, but nonetheless, even if it's not your son, why are you taking that money? You should be giving it to giving it to Erin's, well, I'm gonna say her parents, but you should be giving it to DJ. But he puts it in, maybe he will, but he puts the money in his pocket and takes it. Very douchebag thing to do, in my opinion. And they promise not to read the journals that Erin has left behind. But cut to Mare driving, and she sees the prowler. She sees the random guy she hasn't seen since episode 1, looking behind. I assume was probably Betty's house, but she chases him down, and it's revealed to be an older gentleman by the name of Dennis, and she wasn't obviously expecting that. But going back to, we haven't spoke about Deacon Mark. Now we get him going to a restaurant, getting food. There's some teenagers there that call him out, and one of the girls say, hey, my mom said that he, did something to a 14-year-old girl. We see him rush out of the restaurant. They follow him. They throw a can on him, cut his head, and we'll talk about that scene he has with Father Dan. But it's important to note that this goes back to episode last week where Colin said that if I know what happened, this information is going to get out in the town pretty soon. And that scene shows that a lot of people in town knows Deacon Mark's past. But cut back to the crew burning Erin's journals. We see that Jess comes across, it looked like a picture, or it could have been a note, but nonetheless, she takes whatever that picture or note was and she puts it in her pocket. They burn all the journals. So what was that picture, ladies and gentlemen? Was it a picture of her and Billy, her and John, her and this mysterious person that maybe took her life? Let me know your thoughts on what was it that we think that Jess took with her and the importance of that. But back to the 911 call, we learn that Dennis suffers from dementia, that this might debunk Betty's claiming of the kid next door or behind her. This might dismiss the claims of the prowler on the loose. Again, I go back to the name of this episode titled Illusions. Is it misleading that we can now just debunk that there isn't a predator town? I think there is someone out there. I think that this show is misleading us, that person that may or may not be the prowler may have some connections to the death of Erin. Let me know your thoughts on that. It could be debunked. It could just be putting this aside. But again, remember the name of this episode. But we learn, the detective or Chief Carter is not letting it lose or easy on Mare. He tells her to not get involved. He says, damn it, Mare, I told you not to get involved and keep it that way. Well, she doesn't, unfortunately, as we know what happens at the end of this episode. But back to Deacon Mark, him talking to Dan. He's crying. He tells Big moment here, another mic drop moment. He tells Father Dan that he was indeed with Erin the night of her death. Kind of long story short, he told him that he put her bike in her car. They met. She was in the car. She got a message to meet someone at the park. And he kind of suggested that, no, you need to go home. She was upset. She ran out of the car. Ultimately, we know what happened. She dies. Father Dan asks a logical question. Why the hell didn't you tell the police this? Well, what does it look like? I have these allegations with a 14-year-old, and now this girl comes up missing. And of course, I'm not going to call the cops. And then, the question comes up, did you do it? And, we see his response. Even if I said I didn't do it, would you believe me? I sure hell wouldn't. Do you believe Deacon Mark's little testimony there, his confession of a sorts to Father Dan? Let me know your thoughts there. Cut to seeing Colin and talking to his mom about Mare, as she points out that she knows her son, that he likes Mare and all this stuff. And, he says to her that my whole life, she said, which is an important line, I just want you to be careful. The last words that she said to her son, as he says to her, I've been careful my whole life, Mom, which unfortunately ties to his, we'll get to here in a second. But very interesting scene, guys. I have this in my notes here. I don't know if I'm just looking too much into this, but I don't know if you all noticed, but we get a quick scene of Colin forgetting his coffee mug, and we see that the coffee mug said Detective 1923 and, the county and all that stuff. What's the significance of that? What was the significance of cutting to that coffee so quickly? I don't know if it speaks to DNA, maybe, that Mare is going to take off the coffee case. Again, illusions, misleading. I know a lot of people thought that Colin was the killer, and who knows? We'll see, or some connections to it, because we'll talk about Colin and his truth that he gave us in this episode. But I thought that it was just so weird to cut to that coffee mug so quickly to alluding to something. Let me know if there's some significance. You see Tam, she came through in the clutch. She has a young lady. I don't think they've given us the young lady's name, but she's encountered the kidnapper. She escaped the kidnapper. She fought him off and was, she gave the description what he looked like. He smokes Wilson's, which was huge a little bit later in the episode. But more importantly, genius girl. She got the license plate. Colin calls it in. It's going to take a couple hours, but Tam, you came through in a clutch, and kudos to you. He drives a blue van, all that stuff. So very big come through for that character. This is a big scene here because we see Mare apologizing to Colin about the other night, and Mare opens up about the stuff that she's been dealing with her son and work and everything that, dealing with the custody. This is a big moment. We talked about it, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago when it comes to Colin telling the story of how he found that girl, that something just felt off. That it didn't feel like when he was telling the story how he found her, that it wasn't as it was something missing there. Well, we find out that Colin didn't figure out the case. Long story short, there was a PI that contacted him from the parents of the girl that was missing. He had all the information. He called Colin to come over, compare notes. Colin dismissed him. Again, the details, the devil's in details. He didn't pay attention to that PI. He inevitably decides to go to the PI's house. The PI's dying. He's on hospice. He goes in the house. He sees some information with Colin. He sees the notes, and he's figured out the case. This PI has figured out all the cases. He ties all the things together. Colin takes the credit. That's how he ended up finds the girl. And then we see Mare kind of making her admits to him. Well, she admitted that she planted the drugs in Carrie's car. They kind of laugh about it. But then we see a fantastic line that Mare mentions in regards to just expectations, right? She says to Colin, doing something great is overrated because people expect that from you all the time, and they just learn that you're just as much of a screw up as they are. And what a great line, number one. But then the kiss of death. All my fans out there of horror, drama, thrillers, whenever horror films in particular, I'll be right back. You never say that. And then you never give a character a kiss for the first time and expect you to live the next day, because this was the kiss of death, unfortunately, for Colin, because it's always in this shows when the characters are looking to have the up and up. Remember the last week's episode in regards to coming up the hill? Well, we're coming down the hill. Things are looking up for Mare. She has someone to maybe confide in. She has someone that she connect to. And Colin, and again, he kisses her. And I can't stress enough, it was the kiss of death, because cut to them questioning people in town about the van. They make their way to Mr. Potts' house. The camera pans, and it is revealed that he lives in the tavern that we got last week. This is him. Or is it, ladies and gentlemen? Illusions, I state. They go back and they ask him the questions to turn, they go in the house. He's playing loud music, obviously, because he didn't want to hear people, the girls in the basement, to scream. They ask him to turn the music down. He goes upstairs. Colin recognizes the cigarettes, the Wilson cigarettes. We see Mare gives him the look in regards to get your gun ready, because I don't have my gun, because I'm not a, detective at the moment. We see, Katie and Missy noticing that this isn't the normal routine, and they're shaking on the pipes. They're banging on the pipes harder and harder and harder. And then it goes down, ladies and gentlemen. Bang. We see Colin get shot in the head. We see at this point, just kind of breaking down the scene, Mare runs upstairs. She gets shot, by the way. She messages 911. We see she comes across Missy and Katie. Sit in the basement. They're actually upstairs, but she comes across them. We see that Potts has cameras all over the house. He knows what rooms Mare's in. She makes her way through that kind of the crawl space. She hits him over the head. She makes her way down to the stairs. She picks up Colin's gun. She ultimately kills Mr. Potts. We see the police come in, and again, I go back to that line, that doing something great is overrated. Cut to Mare replaying that scene of Kevin, her son, on the beach when he was celebrating his birthday. Again, cutting back to she just witnessed Colin's death, and it ties back to a traumatic moment, ties back to her son taking his life, but in particular going back to her son at an age where she probably felt that he was innocent, he was perfect. This was, right before his disorder potentially kind of kicked in, his mood swings. Wow, what an episode, guys. I thought that ending, the suspense, I'm literally on the edge of my seat when this is happening. My heart was pounding out of my chest when they saw the cigarettes and he shot him. Mr. Potts shot Colin in the head, guys. It was sad. I got a little emotional. I love me some Evan Peters. Again, we were all kind of thinking there's something going on with Colin. He just had that lie. He didn't figure out the case. But again, remember the name of this episode, Illusions. Is this misleading, guys? Is there some ties to Colin still being involved? Again, the coffee mug. Is there DNA on that coffee mug? What's the situation? Who's his dad? Is there I'm throwing a bone in the water? Here, but could it be that, I don't know, Mare's dad had an affair with Colin's mom and this is her brother? I don't know. That's crazy. I know, right? But who knows? But I do have some questions here that I want to know from you all. Number one, we have this kidnapping situation. How is this the resolve? Is that the killer? Is it an illusion? Is there someone else tied to this circus ring of kidnapping girls? Again, he had Friday night poker nights. Who was over the house during these poker nights? Did they know about the girls that he was kidnapping? Let me know your thoughts there. Did he kill someone else before? What happened to Hillary? Has he done this before? Does it tie into Erin, Mr. Potts killing Erin? Let's talk about that in the comments. Thoughts on Dylan and Jess and that random kid? Did Dylan text Erin to kind of meet with her that night? Something went wrong and he killed her, or the kid killed her, or Jess killed her, or someone else entirely? There's something to be said about that picture she took as well. Let me know your thoughts there. And what about John's affair with this mysterious woman that he has had an affair with in the past? Is it one of the women that we, or I should say maybe Missy, because we know that Katie's been locked up for a year, so it can't be Katie, or could it be? Because John might have connections to Mr. Potts. Let me know your thoughts there. Mark, do we believe his truth? Is he telling the truth in regards to Erin and in regards to that 14-year-old? Let's discuss that. Faye, we can't forget about Faye and not wanting to marry Frank. Is it because she's having an affair with John himself? And then last but not least, we got to go back to the beginning of this episode, the death of Betty. Was it just a coincidence, heart attack, and just crash into a pole? Or was it the weirdo kid or someone else entirely? Let's discuss it all in the comments. 38 minutes plus long. If you sticked around to the end of this review, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love this show. I love interacting with you all. So let's continue the conversation in the comments below. Your pros, your cons, your thoughts on the performances, the comedy moments, the affairs, the reveals, the death of Colin. R.I.P. to Colin. Is he have any more secrets in his closet? What do we think about the kidnapper, John? All the stuff that we got in the episode. Let's talk about it in the comments. Again, like I said up top, next week, keep an eye on the community tab. We may be doing a very unique, fun review for next episode 6, but definitely mark your calendar, May 30th, 8:30 p.m. Starting at 8:30 p.m., we'll be doing a live watch along. I want to see you all there. I want to have a great time with this finale and break it all down with you all. Like I said, too, make sure you're watching all the other reviews I've done the last couple days. Had a fun time watching those movies and shows, and I hope you all are fans of those movies and shows, and let's discuss those as well. So as always, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the bell. That way you don't miss any more other content. You all are awesome. I appreciate you all. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your night and a great week. Hope you all stay safe, and we'll see you on the next video.